My name is Sarashun. I am the High Priestess of the Heart of the Pentacle Fellowship, as most of you know.
Hi, Sarashun.
And also co-founder of the Spiral Tree Tradition. And so I have been involved in Coven workings for quite some time, since 2008. And have been working closely with the Order of the Aurora, of course, before my own coven, and then hived off and created my own. And so today, a lot of our workshop has to deal with what makes an intimate working group and what makes it successful and how to make it continue. And this has been a continuing effort of Phoenix, High Priestess, also present today, and also Belana now, down in Wichita, Kansas, as the three High Priestesses of the Spiral Tree Tradition. And we have been working kind of close together for creating some core lore and different wonderful things for our intimate working groups. So we have a little bit to share when it comes to making it work. And so that's why I wanted to create this workshop today, because we have been doing, I feel, a pretty good job. So, no, not yet. So let's hope that we put enough things in place to not do so. So I would like to go around the room and have everybody introduce themselves so that we can get acquainted, and then we'll get started. There's a lot in this workshop, so we'll try and maximize our time here today with all the things I have to share. So, well, I mean, just talking with all of you and having the introductions, it sounds like most of you have, and judging by our little tally up here, most of you have actually been involved in an intimate working group, or at least as you have defined it. I do have one yes and no up here. I mean, I feel like there's going to be a lot of stories of similar ilk today. We want to talk about why things implode. We want to talk about why is it that these groups fail? Why is it that they succeed? I mean, what can we do better? And so that's the purpose of this workshop. And you pretty much in a nutshell brought it up, is that we don't want that to happen again. And so if we don't want that to happen, how do you prevent it? And so that's what we're going to go into today. So what are some key words that you would use to describe when you hear something like an intimate working group? Like, what would be some key words that you can think of? Like, what would make it different? What would make it different from a spiritual meetup or a study group? What's the difference?
The family.
Yeah, family. That's a good key word.
Intimacy.
What was that?
Intimacy.
Intimacy. Trust. So what are some differences? Like, what would you explain a meetup group or a study group to be?
More social than a or a group of friends.
Okay.
Say
Non-committal. So what's the pros and cons of both? So let's talk about the pros of a meetup group. Like, why would you choose a meetup group over an intimate working group?
Less formal.
Less formal.
Get to know a bigger crowd of people.
Yep.
Push boundaries if you haven't.
Push boundaries.
Less commitment, more independence.
Yep. Yeah, it could just be sort of a social thing, you know, get out there and meet people that have similar minded thinking, that kind of thing. So what would be the con of a meetup group? Or a study group? What was that?
You don't get the family dynamic.
Yes, don't get the family dynamic.
Depending on family, that's not a bad thing.
Exactly, and we're going to go into that as well.
Let's say in some ways depth.
Depth, you lack depth.
You might not have the same ideals and beliefs.
True, you have a lot of variety, which could be a pro and a con.
With a meetup group, people don't have to be as committed so that it's a huge
I think that's probably the biggest reason why people want to create a coven too, is the flaky factor. And so if you have the flaky factor involved with attendance, especially for things like we're talking about today, where if people commit to come but then they don't actually show up, well, then they didn't really commit to come. And so in a coven or an intimate working group or whatever you want to call it, that's not possible. You have to have a more close-knit family, and so therefore you show up. You don't just not show up. So,
Going along with the depth too, you don't get to have as much practice working on yourself because you are working in a family dynamic, and you have to be able to work with everybody. So you also have to be working on yourself.
was actually something I put down too, that you get that mutual support and you also get almost like a constructive counseling unit. I thought that was really well put when I was doing some of my research, is they called it that. You get to share issues and find support in healing those dark shadow issues, which we're actually moving into the winter, and that tends to be where we focus in reflection and introspection, and so that's what we're actually going to be working on pretty soon too. So what would be pros and cons of an intimate working group then? That obviously we mentioned family as a pro, mentioned the mutual support, constructive counseling unit. What are some other things that are pros? Pros.
I would say an actual working group where you actually work together for a specific goal.
Yeah, you're like-minded in a way, and you're kind of like a hive mind in a way, and so you do all work together because you have a specific statement of purpose together. Yes, I agree with that. You had mentioned something. Reliability.
Like where if you go to a meetup, you don't know who's coming, but then if you go to Coven Grove, whatever intimate group, then you can be like, well, I know all or most of these people are gonna be here.
That's right. And really, if they don't show up, generally they will call or text you or tell you they're not going to be there, just like you would to your family. If your family were expecting that you were going to show up at their house and you were going to be late, or you weren't going to show up that day for this, that, or the other reason, you wouldn't just not call them. You wouldn't want them to worry, you wouldn't want them to be concerned about what happened to you, and so you call them and you let them know that you can go for whatever reason. And so it's the same with an intimate working group. You don't just not show up. It's not even a possibility. I also like accountability is another thing that I've thought about. You're challenged to be a better self, and you're accountable for your growth. And so you can't just be a turd. You can't just not do your homework. You have to be accountable for the things that you do. If you work solitary or you come to a study or a meetup group, there may not be a lot of accountability for something like that. But there is in a circle, because people are relying on you, like you were talking about with reliance upon attendance. They're also relying upon you to show up and be your best in circle.
I agree with you on that, and I'd say some of that, just from my experience with the RPAC and this sort of thing, is there's a level of implied expectation, like what you said, of coming to something that's prepared.
Yeah.
Because, even in events like this, you got certain people that you can rely on and be pretty good. But the downside, like this, if you're doing something like I've ran workshops before, there's like people need to come with what's expected, and so that's really hard to continue with something further when people aren't showing up.
That's right.
Which I think, like you said, I agree. I think when you have an intimate group, there's implied expectation.
There are.
So, like going to a class, if someone shows up and they're not prepared, well, you're going to get a talking to.
Oh yeah, by the rest of the group,
Right.
because now the machine's not moving.
Right.
Each person is like a cog in the machine.
Well, and you're going to have to face that expectation. Sorry to be so long-winded, but like here, okay, so being mad at you, well, you just don't have to show up for a while, and whatever. And so I think that's a good thing that comes from it.
I agree with you.
Also in a smaller group, you form beyond just the family connection. It's the fact that you can depend on somebody.
Yeah.
Or it's somebody that you can trust.
Yes.
Because I think even her birth, the core of RPAC was there. Her birth was basically an RPAC board meeting.
That's funny. That's really funny.
She started all well.
Yes.
Go, Phoenix, go.
So it was just that just is the nature of at least the original board members. That's how close we all are.
That's fantastic.
Which is something that I always think of when I think of a good operating coven.
Which actually I wanna expand on that a little further, because I really feel like even though you have a meetup group with RPEC, you kind of have an inner circle within the circle. And so it's almost like you have like your own intimate working group within RPEC, and then you have the meetup group itself. And so I've noticed that working. That's my own observation. I'd like to play a song for you because I think it describes kind of the difference between these two things. I wanted to focus on why do we want to be involved in an intimate working group? Like, what does that do for you? And so this to me is the major reason for me that I think it's so important to be a part of an intimate working group versus working solitary or just coming to a study group. And so listen to this song. And if you'd like to join in song, I'd appreciate that too. This is One Spirit by Spiral Rhythm.
Many spirits joined as one, burn with the power of the blazing sun. There is strength in community, a circle empowering you and me. Circle binds yet sets us free. In the goddess name, so mote it be. One spirit in the dark, like a candle wavers. Many spirits joined as one, burn with the power of the blazing sun. There is strength in community, a circle empowering you and me. Circle binds, yes, sets us free. In the goddess name, so mote it be. One spirit in the dark, like a candle wavers. Many spirits joined as one, burn with the power of the blazing sun. There is strength in community, a circle empowering you and me. Circle binds, yet sets us free. In the goddess name, so mote it be. One spirit in the dark, like a candle wavers. Many spirits joined as one, burn with the power of the blazing sun. There is strength in community, a circle empowering you and me. Circle binds, yet sets us free. In the goddess name, so mote it be. One spirit in the dark, like a candle wavers. Many spirits joined as one, burn with the power of the blazing sun. There is strength in community, a circle empowering you and me. Circle binds, yet sets us free. In the goddess name, so mote it be. One spirit in the dark, like a candle wavers. Many spirits joined as one, burn with the power of the blazing sun. There is strength in community, a circle empowering you and me. Circle binds, yet sets us free. In the goddess name, so mote it be.
So what do you think that song means? Strength in numbers. Strength in numbers.
It's like if you pull out of the fire and go out.
That's right.
But if you pull is in fire, you would go out, and then all of the heat of all the other embers keeps burning.
Exactly. There's one spirit in the dark like a candle wavers, but you can still have a candle kind of an inner circle as part of even RPEC, that you have kind of a circle within a circle, and it's more of the intimacy circle. And then we have, of course, our circles within the Spiritual Tree tradition, and we've talked about various people who have been involved in intimate working groups. For myself, how mine was created, how my coven was created, had to do with meeting up together just like a meetup group, where we had a study group, and it was me teaching something for my third degree. And so I decided to teach a Wicca 101 course that I wrote, and I was teaching, and I had a whole group of students, and it was wonderful. And we went from about January till about probably early April, late March. And as soon as it was finished, everybody was kind of, oh, we're gonna stop meeting? Like, this is it? We're done? And we were meeting so regularly, and they showed up for every single meeting. They took their tests, they did all the things, and all of a sudden we were gonna be done. And that was not cool to anybody. They were thinking, this stinks. I was just getting to know everybody. This was getting to be awesome. We were all sharing stories and having a good time. I don't want this to end. So if you don't want it to end, what do? So that's how my group started, is that it was a small group that kept meeting and doing fun study things, and it just didn't want to end. So groups create for a lot of different reasons, but that was mine. Does anybody else have a reason why you created a group? Was it to do with something similar? You just had a study group, or how did you get involved in another group or start another group?
For me, it was, I wanted to actually be part of a working group that did ritual with people that I trusted, instead of just going to like a big huge group ritual where you don't know a lot of people that are going to participate in that. And I ended up finding, through my first tradition, me and another girl, we were a coven for a little bit, and then we split apart because the other girl moved, and then I moved back up north. And then Thomas and I have various different groups. We've been part of circles, covens, groves, whatever, all the names. And we couldn't find the right group of people until we came to the STD.
Anybody else have a?
I think that for me, and I didn't realize it at the time when I joined, but I found that it's really nice to have a group of people that will 100 support you, no matter what you have going on in your life, no matter what friends you fight with, whatever. I mean, because even within the groups, I'm sure we all have our issues, but we always make an effort to make things right, and that's what's important.
Well, I think for me, especially with ones in the past, and then with COC, what we call cops, roosters, by the way, like that, is a level of intimacy, that pretty much mirrors what most people can. There's a level of want there that you're just not going to get from a broader group. And so you want those like-minded people that are going to be as dedicated and as willing as you are to take something to the next step.
Anybody else?
For me, 10 years ago, I was new to Grand Forks, and I was lonely and had always been the only pagan that I knew. So I went on Witchfox and started trying to meet people, and one of those people happened to be the founder of the OOA. And so eventually she was like, well, did you want to join? Because, and she didn't ever like offer it, but I actually had a dream. I was like, this is the weirdest thing, like, I had a dream about Aurora or whatever, because like I didn't even know this existed. And she's like, I think that might be a sign. So I was like, awesome.
Well, to speak on behalf of Luana as well as the founder of the Order of the Aurora, and I'm sure Bowman back there can share a few stories of his own about the founding of the Order of the Aurora, that basically she came up here from Arkansas, was it? Yes? And coming up here from Arkansas, she was looking for, but kind of ended up going in that direction, if I remember correctly. So do you have anything to share, Bowman, about some of your initial meetings with Milana that might be pertinent about why covens probably create?
I just remember when she came up here telling us that the one started working that way, And so I realized that it must be brand new, and that's, I guess, just, I was seeking at the same time she was seeking a group.
Fantastic. I think there's a lot of reasons, though, that things fizzle out. The group, obviously, that we're speaking of here is successful, and has been for the last 8 years. Pretty formidable for the Order of the Aurora, and I mean for a coven in general. And I think there's a lot of hard work, obviously, that's involved with that, and we'll talk about that as well. But a lot of groups, I think, more often than not, fizzle out. When they start strong, they burn fast, and they're gone. And so why does that happen? And so I actually have a couple of stories to share. I might have you read yours. I have it written down so that you can kind of think about it, Phoenix. But I have a story that Bolana shared with me when I was first writing this workshop, and her points are very strong in here about reasons why groups fizzle out, some of the pitfalls and mistakes they might make in the beginning. And so here's the story from Bolana. About 1.5 years of being in Wichita, Spirit was moving me to do more group work. I kept getting called to leadership roles, even though I despised the idea. I was still suffering from a spiritual depression and just couldn't handle the responsibilities of a group leader. However, I kept getting sent seekers and receiving signs that I needed to teach. I thought I could compromise with the universe and formed the Wichita Witchy Women. I actually think it's really catchy. I explained to them many times that I didn't want to form a coven or be the leader of a group. I wanted to have a ritual group where each of us took turns facilitating ritual. They seemed to simply want to be a part of a witchy group, so we tried it out for a few months. Immediately, they became wishy-washy and didn't show up for meetings, which incidentally were mostly at my place. I realized the group had failed. In hindsight, I realized several things went wrong. Number one, the group's purpose was not clearly defined. Each one of us came to the group with different expectations. One wanted to simply work spells, while another wanted to celebrate Sabbats, and another only wanted to do crafts. Successful intimate working groups have a common purpose. It's okay if each one in the group has different needs and desires to or from the group, so long as they don't run against the common purpose. There were no clear behavioral expectations or consequences as well. So this was her number 2 point. Some obviously felt it was okay to not call or show up to a meeting. We just talked about this earlier. Others felt it was okay only to show up to meetings they facilitated. And when there were grumbles from the others, no group enforced consequences happened as a result. Number 3, we lacked a structure for decision making. Were we consensus-based? Was there a hierarchy? Well, we never talked about it, and therefore it was just a cluster. Everyone looked to me to make decisions, even though I told them I wasn't going to be their grand poobah high priestess. I always love that term. Groups need a container. They need to decide how decisions will be made and not simply relying on one individual to do all the work or to be all the inspiration. So the group fizzled and flew off with the wind, and I learned many things from it. It deepened my respect for OOA's structure and now the STT structure, and my respect for the vows I took at 3rd degree were deepened as well. Those vows tend to follow you around. So any comments on some of these pitfalls that you might want to add?
I
Or
think
questions
a
or
lot
comments?
of why some groups fizzle out as far as from what I've experienced and a lot of different things that I've tried to start and be a part of is group dynamics. When people start to not get along and really clash, it just breaks up the group. And so a lot of us have been part of that. And that's why that group is no longer still working together.
That is an interesting point, and it's actually part of Phoenix's section, is dealing with the group dynamics portion of it, the communication within the group. Any comments about, in this case, of course, the pitfalls were no clearly defined purpose, no behavioral expectations or consequences outlined, and no structure for decision making for the group. In essence, for us, it would be no bylaws. And so we have bylaws in STT, which is the structure she was talking about in her comments. Yes, Bowman?
I think a lot we learn from a lot of experience that, you might ask the question, well, why did she think like she did in Grand Forks and not follow through with Wichita? Well, I believe that a lot of the structure from deal with Grand Forks is from Grand Forks, her mom is like that. During that position, not really come to that structure was
Agreed. I think also the fact that she was used to that structure and kind of wanted something like that, it's hard to move from structure to non-structure, where all of a sudden you go from having the structure of an intimate working group, and then you move from that to just a steady group, and then you're not used to the things that we talked about earlier, with the flakiness of attendance that can happen, or the fact that people just aren't going to always do what they say they're going to do, and all that kind of out of all of this as well. So, for sure with the leadership.
There's also having everybody be able to speak the same language. My late husband and I were in a coven, and it got to a point where anything had to be sent out, they'd look at me and go, well, you need to write such and such. Because they knew I would write and take it seriously. And I'm like, well, write it and I'll edit it. Well, no, you have to write it. When the leadership wouldn't.
Yeah,
So there's leadership in name and there's leadership in action.
it's true. It's true. And really, when you don't get the accolades you deserve for the work that you put in, that's a big part of why people leave as well. If they start to feel like they're doing a lot of work and they're not getting a lot of credit for it, that's not leading to good group dynamics at all. At all. Any other comments on some of the things that Luana shared? If not, we're going to move on to Phoenix, who also contributed some wonderful things as well in the pitfalls category.
The biggest issue I've repeatedly encountered is when someone gets upset about something, and when they come to me, I hear them say, so-and-so or they should have known. And then the hurt person goes on to describe various assumptions they made about the motives behind the perceived callousness of the other member or members and gets even more upset and resentful. Gratefully, we have an established conflict resolution pathway in our bylaws, and they come to me so I can initiate a conversation with the parties involved, and the whole thing gets resolved and released quickly. This was last engaged after one of our retreats about a month ago, but everything was cleared up by the next evening. Also, it's important to let people go when their path calls them elsewhere and they feel they need to leave the group to follow it, and to detach the ego from that. I think the number one reason why groups fall apart is because egos get all blown out of proportion and feelings are hurt, or it turns into a stroke my ego leadership fail, or a controlling power struggle, all the witches should be in my camp sort of thing. A lot of grace is needed, openness to supporting the paths of others and encouraging them to grow and to go where they need to, as well as supporting the establishment and stability of other groups. Introspection to ensure correct motives, clear communication, awareness of your emotional complexes as a human being, commitment to continuing personal growth, leaders should also be students, and humility in leadership. You have to know you don't know it all and be open about that. And send people to others in the community that you know who are stronger or more knowledgeable in a subject than you are. That in itself is powerful towards building up people into equality and strengthens the community overall.
She mentioned were blaming and finger pointing. Isn't that a fun thing? With many things taken personally and a lot of assumptions being made. Bruised egos within the group, power struggles, and that grand poobah high priestess thing we talked about, that leadership. I'm the biggest awesome cheese in this group and I get to run things, which actually I have a quote about later from G'day Parma that he even stated, there is no use sitting back and idly accepting the tyranny and injustice that can sometimes occur within a group. And that's definitely what happens a lot when the leader kind of takes charge and just starts running like a tyrant, and that's not fun either. And so these are some of the other pitfalls that were mentioned here. Does anybody have any comments on those?
It might be a little bit, not quite exactly what you said, but I think too, when it comes down to a working group, being selective about who you are letting into your group. Because if you're just letting any and everybody in, then obviously that's not going to work out well for you. I think being selective and being choosy, basically.
I like that you brought that up because we will go through the application process and how important that can be for a group and why we have that as part of the group dynamic as well. And so that's a good point.
Knowing when you have the right foundation of people, like I've been to some groups and covens where they are forming and kind of got their core people, but then they didn't build the foundation of that core people, and they kept adding, and it seriously imploded, and I went, whoa, okay, I'm out of here.
That's a really good point too, is about that whole, like I said, that whole starting up like a huge fire and then you fizzle out. And so instead of doing that, you kind of need to build the embers first and then grow and grow if you choose to grow to that point. And so you have to take care of your members that are already involved as well. That's a very good point. So we had also mentioned the blaming and finger pointing and
Can I say something real quick on that?
Sure.
Like with the emotion in the group, and just not in Covens in general, but a group. The closer knit it is, and the tighter it is, the more you feel like family.
Yeah.
But you're probably gonna fight like family. The emotions are gonna be higher.
agreed.
You know, it's gonna be harder for people to control. It's gonna hit you home a lot more.
People are also more comfortable in that family type setting, where they're able to let those emotions out and know that they'll have help to deal with them, or, you know, if they beat you back into place.
Beat you back into place. Now you make me sound like the tyrant here.
There needs to be a level of maturity, I think.
Agreed.
And I mean, even within RPAC, I think some of, I use this as an example, where the people that have kind of stuck with this group, if there is immature things happening, or, I mean, come on, you're gonna disagree.
Yes.
It's gonna happen, and when you can see that
If
maturity.
it's healthy,
Right.
you're gonna disagree.
Right, and so, the level of people being able to realize that, I think it, like, RPEC is definitely, I think we've remained smaller because it beats that out.
Yeah.
I mean, there isn't grass to burn usually that we allow. Then again, it goes back, like you said, with bylaws and stuff. I mean, that's what we have to follow.
And we've
Yeah.
got Sergeant
Sergeant
at
at
Arms.
Arms right here. Who is Mark put at the fruit squad, so. We have
Who's
someone.
much more of a bird squad than
Right.
my husband.
We have someone that, something happens and she's one of the meetings and goes, this happened and this bylaw says that this is what should happen.
Agreed.
So it's been, I think that's a mature thing as well.
It is.
Person has to be comfortable and willing to, I would say, like she said, selective.
Yeah.
You can't just always be not wanting to hurt people's feelings, but sometimes you gotta say stuff.
That's right. Well, and honestly, like T. Thorne Coyle says, that's part of compassion. Compassion isn't just doing what you think is going to make you popular. Compassion is actually acting with love, and sometimes love hurts. Sometimes love is doing the right thing, and sometimes love is actually laying the hammer down.
That's a good way to put it.
And so we discipline our children, and we do that with love. We do that to show them consequences for their actions, but that is part of compassion. It's teaching them to do better and to challenge them to be better. And that's exactly what an intimate working group does. And so that's definitely the focus here today. Communication's such a big deal, isn't it? And so with the whole bruised egos and butthurt feelings and all that kind of stuff, that's all part of the communication factor. And so communication leadership is another thing that keeps coming up over and over and over about egos getting in the way and that tyrant factor and being more graceful with how you react to situations. And so communication and leadership, I would say, to me, are the top 2 reasons why groups fail. If you want to just generalize it a little bit, those are usually the top 2 reasons. Some of them are mentioned, like no clear statement of purpose. Well, that's communication. Nobody communicated that that's what they wanted. You didn't communicate that there are consequences for actions such as not showing up for attendance or not doing your homework or whatever. And then the leadership portion, of course, all the fails that could be involved with that, where you get the grandpa